stories. Most of them aren't my stories, but I'll give you a little sense of Jellyvision, the company I run, and how I got there. So we'll start off with my story. And then I'm going to tell you the story of Bonnie, the one-legged skier, Bert, the t-shirt guy, and finally, Captain Dave of the USS Santa Fe. Because I think that these stories are better at sort of giving lessons that I wish my younger self would have known 20 years ago when I started this madness. And then I'm going to end with 6 specific tips I wish I knew then that I know now, just in case it's helpful. And then if there's time, I don't know how quickly I'm going to speak, happy to take any questions at the end. But my name is Amanda Lannert. I am the CEO of a growth stage tech company called Jellyvision. And it's worthwhile to take a second to explain how I got to the gig, because I often get called for career advice. And my answer is, be lucky, not good. I'm the kid of academics. My dad knew from the time he was 15 years old exactly what he wanted to be. He studied for 15 years to be exactly that. And not only was he a neurologist in his entire career, he just studied Parkinson's disease. And on the other side, my mom was a nurse turned stay-at-home mom. I grew up in a family where you learned how to learn. Academics were important, but business was not a language we spoke. So my plan as a college student was to get a JD MD, and I was going to write public policy for hospitals where ethics and science collide. What do you do with abandoned embryos that are scientifically life but not wanted life? What do you do around dignity and death and euthanasia? And I went to a bougie New England liberal arts school, and I spent my junior year abroad at the University of Edinburgh, where I went from a total grind school where we wrote multiple papers a week to this very large lecture-based curriculum, and I barely was in class there. So I traveled from the Highlands of Scotland to Morocco, from Portugal to the Czech Republic, and mostly studied beer and boys. I got behind in my pre-med credit, had the year of my life where I learned more in that year traveling than I learned in all of my years in academia combined. But came home and said, hey, Dad, amazing year, thank you so much, but I'm behind in my pre-med. I'm going to need a post-bac year, a 5th year of college to make it up. And he said, that's great. How are you going to pay for it? And when I realized I was off the dole, I sat down and did an assessment of my life, and I said, I have no skills, no network, and no experience whatsoever besides bartending. What am I to do? And I said, well, I'll try advertising. Like, it was that simple. I'm like, I don't think I can offer consulting. There's nothing I can do to offer the world, so I'll try advertising. That seems pretty cool. I was an East Coast kid who didn't want to go all the way to the West Coast, so I sort of just looked at the Midwest. And when you're an East Coast kid looking at the Midwest, it really just looks like Chicago. You don't know there are all these amazing cities nearby. So I went Chicago, advertising, and there was a company called Leo Burnett that was the biggest by far advertiser in Chicago. I scored an interview January of my senior year of college and got a job there. Graduated on a Friday, showed up to Leo Burnett on a Monday wearing shoulder pads and like the whole like mini power suit kind of thing. And right away got $110 million a year to spend getting kids to eat Pop-Tarts and Eggo waffles. So super fun job, and for what it's worth, we did not know they were poison at the time. I felt really good about it. Like now I'd be like, I wouldn't let my kids eat a Pop-Tart, but at the time it was just really, really cool marketing. And at Leo Burnett, I learned that if you work with the right people, anything can seem interesting and important. Because it wasn't interesting and important, and it's like it was advertising, but it mattered to me, and excellence mattered, and our product mattered, and our consumers and results mattered, and all that kind of stuff. And after doing 3 years of spending a ton of money, if you think about it, the Pop-Tarts that sold the year I started, if you laid them end to end, they would have circled the globe 5 times. Like, that's how big Pop-Tarts were. I got to do that. And then I moved into a new brand and new business development think tank in a large company. And I got to watch a very large corporate American environment innovate, or try to innovate. And I knew I wanted to go from big to small and slow to fast and stuff that you could buy in a grocery store to tech. So unbelievable 5.5-year run. I start to interview. And I score my first interview for a VP of marketing job at a startup. I go to Evanston to meet at Blind Faith Cafe for what was supposed to be a 45-minute interview. It ended up being a 3.5-hour conversation that changed the trajectory of my life, because the person I was interviewing with is Troy Hennekoff, who is the godfather of Chicago tech. I just got lucky, better lucky than good. And while I wouldn't join his startup, he introduced me to Jellyvision, a company that was at the height of its gaming days. And I said, wow, it's tech, but it's gaming. This is amazing. And Troy used to work there, so he gave me a warm intro, and I just was there 3 weeks later as an employee. First person to ever join the company who didn't interview with the founder first, just snuck in. And I joined Jellyvision at a time where the talent was so good. Do you know Seth Meyers, the talk show host? He got declined for a writing gig there because the writers in seat were Mike Brum and Allison Silverman, who went on to become respectively the head writers of The Daily Show with Jon Stewart and The Colbert Report. Still late night with Colbert. Like, that's who my coworkers were. Unbelievable time. I joined as marketer. I had been VP track at Leo Burnett, a much bigger company, and Jellyvision didn't want to give me a director title. I said, I don't want to really fight about titles, but marketing manager is a step back, publicly speaking. So let's not fight, let's just call it marketer. And about 6 months later, I became president of the company, inherited my first P&L, and it was of a company going off a cliff. Jellyvision had made all of its money on these CD-ROMs. We used to put data on CD-ROMs and put them into machines. And because of the advent of the internet, the price point of CD-ROMs went from $30 to $20 to $10 to $5 in 18 months. Our bread and butter cratered, but our costs were steady, revenue was going down. I said, okay, what can we do? This internet thing seems to be a big deal. We'll raise money. Then the bubble burst in 2001. Bubble burst, there's no financing. I said, okay, there is a big technology transitioning happening. It's the first Xbox, the first PlayStation, the very first Dreamcast. We will go to these publishers and pitch games. Even though they typically invest in like the core games that show off the technology of the boxes, let's not worry about that. We'll do like the mass market game show games, like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and You Don't Know Jack, which were our bread and butter. And we put together 3 deals to extend the life of the company. And the first one died, and then the second one died. And I remember exactly where I was sitting in the building in which we still live today. The third deal died, I put down the phone and knew I had to shut down the company. And I have a really unique experience of writing a severance letter from myself to myself. And as hard as that was, letting go of that talent was worse. A founder credits me a lot with saying, you did it proactively, you saw it coming, and you were able to save us from total disaster. In fact, a small team was kept and moved into a new company with a new mission, but I was crushed. I had utterly face-planted as a leader, abject, unequivocal failure. And it took me about 3 weeks to even admit to my family I didn't have a job. I just could not get over the shame. I go to Europe to burn some time, get my head on. 9/11 happens. I think I'm never going to work again. So I'm just like hanging out, killing time. My sister lived in San Francisco, so I thought I'll go hang out with her. She goes to work, and she's about the only person working in San Francisco, post 9/11, post .com bubble burst. So she'd go, and I'd go sit in coffee shops. And people are like, what did you get laid off from? And I'm like, oh, the shame, I failed. And they're like, everyone failed. Everyone failed, but the internet's here to stay. We're all gonna ride again. Like, get over it. Get over yourself. I failed this way, I'm gonna fail again a couple more ways, but like this technology is gonna change the world. So I got a little dose of that West Coast resilience, right? That grit, that grind, that hustle, that belief. And meanwhile, our founder pulls off a miracle. He raises a seed round. We called it a Series A, but it was a seed round in Q4 2001, when I don't think anybody else on the planet raised money. And he calls me and he says, come back, rejoin the company. And we went from creating virtual game show hosts for B2C gaming to creating virtual advisors in a B2B enterprise space online. Her thesis was, we're going to go to where there's furrowed brow, where people are trying to do something complicated and boring, but important, and we'll talk them through it. So new lease on life, thanks to my West Coast homies. New financing, new mission, new company, boom, join, we go. And then proceed to spend the better part of a decade, 7.5 years, going sideways. Never managing to grow, but managing to just not run out of money despite a few more near-death experiences. Until finally, we landed on something called Alex, which is a platform we licensed to mostly large employers to help them help their employees choose and use their benefits. To kind of give you a sense of the world in which I live and work, Ford spends more money per car on health insurance than they do steel. Starbucks spends more on health insurance than they do coffee beans. And yet 1 in 4 American employees would rather clean a toilet or be placed on hold than shop for benefits. So we are a company that learned how to entertain, learned how to teach, learned how to persuade, and put that all together to basically sell math so that people can make good decisions about risk and their health and their family and their wealth. Last year, we did $110 billion worth of premiums on our platform. We have 1,600 customers and 8 million users of our software to make their benefits decisions. And in many respects, I feel like we're just getting started. And being CEO of Jellyvision has given me so much access to interesting rooms, interesting people, and interesting side gigs. I'm on the board of Spot Hero. I'm on the board of a publicly traded company. I'm on the board of P33 and 1871 and Hyde Park Angels. I'm a very active angel investor. I spend a lot of time thinking about tech. But there's got to be a point to this. Like, what's the point of the story of Jellyvision? Sitting here with all these faces, like, what's the point? I don't know. But I heard a story about Bonnie St. John that I'm going to tell you that I think sums it up better than I could just looking at Jellyvision. Bonnie St. John's a real person. I saw her at an Inc. leadership conference. She walked out, sort of sauntered out, and she did this kind of move where she's like, she's a 54-year-old African-American woman, cute bob. She had a bright red jacket on, a very brightly colored floral skirt on, and then she had these canary yellow patent leather pumps on one leg and then on a Terminator-like prosthetic. So she saunters out in these high heels with her prosthetic, and her company is called Courageous Spirit, Inc. And I was like, that's a little taking yourself seriously, but it's like the perfect name for this woman's company. She's done a lot of amazing things, multiple degrees from Harvard, worked with the Clinton Foundation, literally a peacekeeper with the UN. But of all the things Bonnie did that amazed me, it's the story of her life. She was born with a severely disabled leg, and at the age of 18 months, had to have her leg amputated several inches above the knee as a toddler, right after she learned to walk. Did not have access to the best physical therapy or prosthetics, and yet at the age of 14, learned how to ski on one leg. And by 17, Bonnie was good enough that she qualified for the Paralympics in downhill skiing. Bonnie almost didn't go to the Olympics because her family didn't have any means, so her church did a fundraiser to get just enough money for Bonnie and her mom, she was a minor, she had to have her mom with her, to fly to Germany so Bonnie could compete in the Olympics. She's an amazing storyteller. She talks about being at the top of the mountain and there's a bar on her one leg, and there's a guy that used to stand there and would count you down when you're about to race. 3, 2, 1, boop, boop. You hear the beep, you push through the bar, and your time starts. And Bonnie did the kind of skiing where you like whip around the flags. And she said for that kind of particular downhill skiing, you can almost hear if you're skiing well rather than seeing or feeling it. So you listen for the flags that hit your back as you go. So it's thup, 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 thup. She hears the rhythm. She is flying. She sees the last flag, takes it really, really tight, crosses the finish line, catches her breath, and looks up to the board. She says, that is the best I could do. And the board said, that's not only number one, you just set an Olympic record run. No one had ever skied faster than Bonnie St. John. It's your combined 2 runs that determine the winner. And Bonnie St. John says, this is me, this is my day, gold. Morning becomes noon, noon becomes afternoon, and the sun that's tucked away in the morning comes out during noon and softens the snow, and then goes away behind the trees, and that softened snow can get icy. And apparently, if you're skiing 70 miles per hour on one ski and you catch ice, you are likely to fall. And Bonnie is hearing another skier down, another skier down. She says, not me, not today. Last skier to go is Bonnie St. John. She takes the position, 3, 2, 1, boop, push, 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 and then again, she is flying. She sees the last turn, makes a split-second decision to take it tight to the flag. She catches her ski on ice, and she falls. And she says she had a palpable moment of being down and going, I can't believe I fell, and then pops up, pushes herself across the finish line, catches her breath, and looks to the board. And she had fallen from first to second to third. And in that moment, Bonnie St. John became the first Black woman to ever medal in downhill skiing. Champion. But Bonnie being Bonnie, she couldn't help but reflect that that moment of saying, I can't believe I fell, is what cost her the gold. So her lesson, which was briefly on a Starbucks cup, is simply this. Everyone falls down, winners get up, gold medal winners get up the fastest. If Jellyvision had not had the resilience to pop back up, the humility to learn the lessons the fall is trying to teach you, like if everybody's falling, maybe take that last turn wide. And then unrealistic, unimaginable optimism and a good sense of humor that things would finally go our way, we wouldn't be here today and I wouldn't be telling you other people's stories. But like the road up is never linear. It is this. And so half the battle is having a good plan and having a good idea and executing well. And I think the other half of the battle is like recovering when it absolutely doesn't go to plan right out of the gates. I cannot say any more about Jellyvision than it's a story of like, I can't believe they're not dead yet. I'm like, still not dead. Still not dead. So that's Bonnie St. John. 2 more stories. Bert, the t-shirt guy. Bert, I also heard a different year at a conference, and it was a bunch of like magnets. I had seen Mark Cuban and then a local guy, Jason Fried, like the smartest of the smart guys. And Bert walks out and he has a baseball hat on backwards, a t-shirt that says, not all who wander are lost, and shorts. And I kind of was like, okay, all right, here we go. And it turns out Bert is one of the most engaging speakers I've ever heard. His company is called Life is Good. They make little graphic t-shirts like Jake walks the dog, Jake surfs. They briefly had a store in Midway Airport. But he basically has built a several $100 million apparel company based on doing good and being good and giving back. He's like Tom's Shoes, one of those companies that like a lot of their profit goes to like charity, very, very conscious base. But this guy is just like an optimist, and he's lovely, and like he's just this Boston guy to a single Boston mother of 6 boys, right? And he shows a picture of himself as like a 21-year-old where he and his brother were at the Jersey Shore. They were sick of being like broke. So they printed up a bunch of t-shirts and said, buy a t-shirt and feed 2 hungry guys. And that was how Life is Good was founded. And now it makes like $300 million a year or something like that. So super likable guy, super adorable storyteller. And the final story he tells is about the Boston Marathon bombing. And because he just made us love him, and you could tell how much he loved Boston, the oxygen went out of the room when he started to talk about it, because you could see how much it hurt. And he said, my first thought was, oh my God, my city. I'm at he was at the Red Sox game, and he hears about the bombing the same way everybody else did, which was through CNN. He's like, oh, my city. And then he's like, oh my gosh, my company. Because they were a Boston-based t-shirt company, he had 51 employees at the finish line handing out free t-shirts to finishers of the race. So he's like, I gotta go. He runs, because the city of Boston was pretty quickly shut down to transportation, he has to run to a bookstore 6 blocks from Ground Zero that they set up so that he could do a physical check-in of every employee who was there to say, are you physically well, are you mentally well, what resources do you need? And so his company resources are there, the people come in, 50 out of 51 people check in. One is just MIA, they know who it is. He runs to the hospital saying, is this person here? They say, hey, we're Homeland Security, you're not next of kin, we can't release any information. He runs to his office, works, gets files, social security number, next of kin information, runs back to the hospital, and is able to talk his way in past Homeland Security. And sure enough, this employee is in the hospital. And in fact, Bert puts a picture of him up on the Jumbotron. So just imagine, giant Jumbotron. This picture goes up, and again, a gasp from 800 people at once. Because Bert showed a picture of a 32-year-old guy in a hospital bed in a hospital gown. He's got one of those like neck braces on. He's not intubated, but he's braced, so he's kind of looking oddly. And he is just covered in shrapnel wounds. So Bert walks in and is like, oh my gosh. And the guy goes, no, I feel so lucky, what can I do? Bert said, what are you talking about, Lucky? You're just the victim of a bombing in Boston. What do you mean, Lucky? The guy says, the first bomb goes off, I don't know what's happening. The second bomb goes off, I hit the ground. When I open my eyes, I look to the left, I see a downed child. I look to my right, I see people missing limbs. Arm, leg, still there. I feel so lucky, what can I do? And Bert says, I don't know, but I'm on it. He calls an all-hands meeting where 300-odd employees show up to answer the question of what can we do? And right away, the brainstorming is, we are a t-shirt company. We should make t-shirts. And Bert says, yes. And they're like, Boston Strong as a hashtag, became viral right away. We should do Boston Strong t-shirts. And Bert said, Boston Strong is kind of the message of you mess with the wrong city. Is there something we can do that's more authentically us? More about hope and optimism and kindness? And they came up with an idea for a t-shirt that on the front said Boston, and on the back it said nothing is stronger than love. And they printed these t-shirts up and gave them to storefronts all over Boston, and every penny of proceeds, not profits but proceeds, went to buy prosthetics for the victims of the bombing. The company literally helped put the people of Boston back together. And I'm a CEO sitting in that crowd, and I said, what must it have felt like to be an employee in that community on that day when those decisions were made? Because that is not a good business decision. Giving away all your proceeds is not a good business call. But oh my gosh, it was such a right call. And two things came to mind to me. The first is whenever you are managing business, whether it's a CEO or a person on a project, there is a head and a heart, and they must be managed and cultivated and nurtured very intentionally. The head is like unit economics and performance, and the heart is culture and how we treat each other, and is this a safe and nurturing environment? Do we make the world a better place, right? And the second thing I thought is, may I never be called to action like he was, but man, there's nothing stopping having that kind of impact if called, right? And sort of the lesson I came up with hearing that story is like, I gotta be the CEO I wish I had, right? And I tell that to people who are like right out of school in their first job. I'm like, be the CEO you wish you had. Because you can make an incredible impact with just a project or a team or a division or a company if you're a guy like Bert who acts on good intention and who nurtures the heart and the head of what a collective people can do together. So Bert Jacobs, the t-shirt guy, unbelievable what people can do if you act like the CEO you wish you had. And the final story I'm going to tell is about Captain Dave. And this is a little bit more of like a businessy one. I heard the story through a Harvard thing, and it's more like a case study. But I have to give you a little context about the Navy. It is incredibly matrixed and hierarchical. You work your way up, and there is a top job in the Navy, and it's called captain. And it's like the CEO of a boat. And there are only as many roles as there are boats. And so many insanely talented people never get the shot to be the CEO of a boat, because you have to be of the age typically like 52 to 57, and then you retire, and you have to be ready when a boat comes available. So incredibly coveted. You got to be lucky and great to get this thing. So Captain Dave, not to give a spoiler, his name is Captain Dave, you can tell what he says, but he gets a call if he'd like to be the captain of the USS Santa Fe when he was 36 years old. So Dave's like, I've done well in the Navy, but like my first question is, what is wrong with this boat? And the answer was, as best as the Navy could measure, literally everything. There are two main ways the Navy measures the success of a boat. The first is pass-fail rates on standardized tests. Everyone from the top lieutenants all the way down to the servicemen and women who are enlisted, you have to take regular tests, and they measure, are you building capabilities, are you building competence, or are you not? Abysmal failure rates. And the second thing they measure is reenlistment. How many people who finish a tour reenlist in the Navy? And of those that reenlist in the Navy, how many want to be on the same boat and do another tour of duty? And the answer to that was 0 and 0. Nobody wanted anything to do with the Navy after being on a tour with the USS Santa Fe. So Dave thinks about it, talks about it with his partner, and decides, I'm going to take this job. And the first thing that Dave does is he interviews one-on-one everybody on the boat. Everybody of every rank and file talks to them. And one of the guys was a serviceman, and he's like, sir, you're the captain. I barely have a GED. You know, I joined the Navy to like just try to get some skills, but like of all the things I thought I'd be doing, talking to you isn't one of them. And Captain Dave says, we have real problems on this boat. The people closest to the problems always have the best ideas. I would like to hear yours. And this guy says, well, you're supposed to be teaching me skills, and I want to be studying for these tests to get said skills, but I have to paint the boat 6 times a year. I did not join the Navy to be a painter of boats. I joined the Navy to get skills. And if you just change the bolts that hold the boat together from what they are to stainless steel, there'd be less rust bleeding down the side of the boat. We would paint it less, and I would have more time to study and get skills. That would be a win-win. Captain Dave makes a note of it, writes it down, and after the end of the day, he starts to make some calls, and it turns out this guy with barely a GED was right. And now stainless steel bolts are standard in the Navy, and crews paint boats twice a year instead of 6 times a year, because Captain Dave asked one man, why? He keeps doing his one-on-ones, talks to other people, and another person says, I don't remember the rank or file of this guy, but he's just like, we never have any fun. I'd really like to have some fun. Can we do something that's fun? And Dave's like what? And the guy's like, I don't know, an on-deck barbecue. That would be fun. Captain Dave's like, I have budget for that, for sure. So they set up on the deck. Their barbecue grill's going. Music is playing. It is a gorgeous day. And the servicemen and women, the lower rank people, come out, and they get in line, and the mood is good. Captain Dave crosses past them, walks over and goes up to that crow's nest, that little galley where you can look out on the boat from on high. So he's just like leaning over, watching dynamics, feeling the music, it's all good. About 15 minutes in, the officers, the lieutenants, and class people come out, and they cut to the front of the line, and they get their food, and then they all go sit at an officer's table, have their lunch. 5 minutes, before the last person is served, when there are about 4 people left in line, Captain Dave comes down, he walks over, and he gets to the end of the line. And a lieutenant gets up and goes, Captain Dave, officers eat first, we've earned it. You may not know that because you're so new to this, but captains eat first. Captain Dave says, no, I'm good, thank you so much, you go back and eat. Last person served is Captain Dave, he takes his tray, and he goes and he joins a table of enlisted men and women. He never has a meeting, he never writes a memo, there's no policy, no rule, nothing. He just sits and eats with enlisted people. Next month, new barbecue, grills are out, weather's great, servicemen and women line up. Dave crosses the room, goes up into the crow's nest, crosses his arms, and watches. 15 minutes later, the officers saunter out. They get to the back of the line, and they spread and mix with officers joining enlisted men and women left and right. And I use that lesson to just be like, the greatest lesson of all in leadership is that what you do is so much more important than what you say. And one of the greatest things you can do in business is have a bias towards action. Don't just come up with the ideas, execute the ideas. It will make you incredibly valuable in whatever capacity you operate. So those are stories that I was like, empower women, empower people, right? 3 stories, actions speak louder than words. And then I just have like some tips about stuff I've learned the hard way that may you not take as long to figure it out as I did. And you probably already know these, but it took me a while to figure it out. First things first, it's not what you know, it's what you can figure out. I spent my entire career over my skis as a tech CEO who has an English major with a concentration in Augustan to Romantic poetry. That was my college experience. Like, it taught me nothing about how to be a tech CEO. But the good news is there's Google. And I remember sitting in a board meeting as a specific example where my board said, you have to go raise $20 million of secondary capital. And I'm like, okay, got it. Finish the meeting, go to my computer, open it up, and type in, what is secondary? And it tells you. And it gives you examples. And it's all right there. You don't even have to ask. I didn't even tell the board I don't even know what that is. I just asked Google, and Google told me. And I truly want to put it in context, particularly for the young people. I started working before everyone had a laptop computer. I started working before there were smartphones, social media, broadband web. It will not stop. In 20 years, you will be doing jobs, at least part of your jobs, that do not exist today. And so the most important thing is you learn how to figure it out. You gotta be a figure it outer, a self-adaptive learner, meaning not teach me, I wanna be taught, but I can figure out how to do something. That is gonna be the holy grail skill set in a world where there is more and more machine learning and automation. So it's just figure it out. You don't have to know how to do anything, you just have to know how to figure it out, because every day I'm figuring out new parts of my job I don't know how to do. And that said, you will reach a point in your career where who you know becomes more important than what you know. And for me, it happened pretty late because I was pretty slow on the take, but oh my goodness, start building your network now. Like, if you have a meeting with someone you think is really interesting, a hack is to say, I'm gonna put their contact and why I thought they were interesting on my calendar for 120 days from now as a reminder just to reach back out and send an article or a hello or how'd that thing you mentioned go, just to try to build long-term relationships. Because right now, I don't have to know anything. I just go, hey, I know what you're looking for. Let me call Sam Yegan. Let me call Megan McCann. Like, I just call people. I connect people right now. And it is 1,000 brains connected instead of just whatever my measly one can pull off. So think about building networks. And importantly, think about it in the capacity not of what you want. The hard work to be done early in your career is to ask, what can I give? What can I be helpful with? What can I teach? How can I connect? What can I serve? And then give that away free and free and free and free, and then it starts to come back to you. Every single one of my board seats, which are paid positions, came because a CEO had reached out to me and said, I heard you will help people talk through tough stuff. I'm like, of course I will, of course I will. We end up clicking, and then I end up with a job as a board director. I wish I had known that at 23. I wish I had known you give, 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 and it all comes full circle, and you build these wonderful relationships. And along those lines, if you are just saying, I need something, I need network, make it easy to be helpful. People want to help you. They want to see you win, but what they don't have is a lot of time. So not helpful. Hey, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I was hoping I could talk to you about it. I'm like, I have no idea what you want to be when you grow up. Versus, hey, Amanda, I am really interested in this computer science gig at Google. I see you're connected with the hiring manager. We had a great chat. I told you a little bit about me. Would you be open to forwarding an email that I'm going to write to you, to your contact, to see if you can bump me to the top of the list for an interview? Yes, I will totally do that. I will 100% get it done. You just made it so easy. So understand, people want to be helpful to you, particularly in Chicago. It's a very nice town. Making it easy is the battle so that people can quickly be helpful to you. And that's a key part of networking. I do a lot of panels, sitting there with a group of men. And invariably, usually towards the end when it's audience Q&A, a woman will stand up and say, "This question is for Amanda." I'm like, here we go. Amanda, how do you manage work-life balance? And I say, that is such a great question. Being in tech in a startup is incredibly demanding. But what I would love to do is turn the mic over to the male CEO sitting next to me, whose wife and 4-month-old baby are in the audience because he's trying to figure out how to do work-life balance. How about you take that one? I would ask that we normalize men or partners as equal partners at home. Men leaving to do pickups. Like, to say something really outrageous, people are like, how can you be out and about? How can you be out and about? I have a wife. My kids all have braces. I don't know the name of the orthodontist or what it costs. It happens to be that my wife is my husband. But when I say I have a husband, people do not understand the amount of work he does. And we have to normalize co-partnerships at home. We have to start asking men, how do you do work-life balance? How do you father and work at the same time? Because that should be really hard and really tiring. Please stop asking it of women, and please start asking it of men. Let's normalize home life is a shared responsibility. 3 more. Home stretch. Okay. I fight for every dollar for Jellyvision. I fight for my employees. I fight for customers. I negotiate really hard. We have made now, at this point, $500 million in revenue profitably. We have not burned venture capital to get there. We've only put $6 million on the balance sheet. I will squeeze a dime out of the business, and I will fight for our people and our customers. But I didn't know to fight for me. I thought that if I take care of everyone and everything, the board of directors would take care of me. And I was sitting with a group of 4 male CEOs, and we were talking about compensation. I was like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be paid. I don't even know what my equity position is supposed to be. And they went in a circle and told me their base, bonus, and equity position. So I had 4 examples of Chicago Tech CEO compensation. I went back to my board and simply said, hey, I have some benchmarks for you. My compensation base was changed by $100,000, and I got a couple percentage points of equity that are worth several million dollars just because I had benchmarks. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, you weren't looking out for me. No, that is your job to look out for you. That is your job to look out for you. And we have to start talking a little bit about money. It's the most important consideration you get from an employer, and it's okay to talk about. It really is. It's okay to talk about and not be weird. Men, tell us what you're making. Tell us your equity positions, because you're going to hear later on today about wealth and things like that, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. But while everybody's really focused on the wage gap, the really terrifying thing is the wealth gap. And wealth is an ownership. Wealth is investments. Wealth is an equity. And if you do yourself a solid, learn about cap tables. Learn about employee stock options or RSUs. Wealth is an ownership, and women need to be taught those concepts and need to fight for them. Because you being rich, you will make better investments and smarter investments, and you will spend your money and time on different vendors, and different businesses will win. It is accretive. It will pay it forward if we can get more women and more Black and brown people not to have wage equality, but to have wealth equality. So talk about money. I say this a lot, and I'm not very good at it. but it's really important. And I say to a lot of CEOs, you cannot change the world, but you can change how you feel about the world. And my advice over and over again is, don't be careless, but care less about what people who don't love you think about you. Care less about what people who don't love you think about you. Get rid of those shackles that we have to be liked. You think I'm bossy, not a boss? I don't care. I don't care. I do care, and I stay awake at night and lose sleep over it, but I'll act in the moment like I don't care. And that lets me be bolder, and that lets me raise my hand more, and I can speak up more. And now I just get comfortable, like I think I belong in any room. And the story of the first speaker, was the most insane story, but I am the daughter of a woman who was born to a 15-year-old single mother. She worked very hard to create an expectation that my voice was allowed in rooms. So get that armor on. Hold your power. Don't give the power of your feelings away to people who aren't worth it. And this is the last little bit. I love being CEO of Jellyvision. I love Jellyvision, but I love being CEO. None of my board seats, none of the speaking stuff, nothing would have happened if I hadn't been CEO. And I joined as marketer, right? So how do you go from marketer to CEO, right? I went marketer, president. On my birthday, about 12 years ago, the founder and CEO of Jellyvision, Harry Gottlieb, says, let's go to lunch for your birthday. And I'm like, well, that's pretty weird. We do a lot of stuff at Jellyvision for my birthday. I'm like, fine, we'll go to lunch. And he's like, let's go to the Art Institute. We're in, north of River North. That is a hall for lunch. I'm like, that's really out of the way, but okay, we'll go to the Art Institute for this birthday lunch. And as we're walking, get out of the cab, he's like, why not, it's such a nice day, why don't we sit on this bench outside the Art Institute? Like, okay, that's weird, but okay. Like, I've worked with you for 10 years. Fine, we'll sit on a bench and have a chat. And then he takes his messenger bag and he goes, I have a gift for you. And I'm like, gosh, this stage gets weirder. He's not a gifty guy. Why does he have a gift for me? Reaches into his bag and he pulls out a gift bag and hands it to me. And it is heavy. It is heavy. And I'm holding it and going, oh no, it's a brick. He's gifting me a brick as a metaphor of what we're building together. And it's a metaphor of building, and I don't like clutter. I'm gonna have to have this brick with me for the rest of my days at Jellyvision. And he goes, open it. I'm like, okay, he put a plaque on the brick. I get it. It's, it's gonna be funny and sweet. He's such a magical guy. There's gonna be this funny plaque on this brick that I now have to have with me for my rest of my days at Jellyvision. And I unwrap the brick, and it's not a brick. It's a box of business cards that says Amanda Lannert, CEO. And I look at him, and I say, no. He says, yeah. I say, no. And he says, yeah. And I'm like, no. That is how I became CEO of Jellyvision. And if I could go back to little Mandy, the advice I would give is this: have more audacious dreams. It kind of bothers me that I never considered being CEO. I was talking to a guy who runs a really prominent tech company in Chicago, and he said, I'm not quitting this time until I'm a billionaire. It's not the way I think. I would never say something like that, but I couldn't help but reflect, how different would Jellyvision be if I did think somewhat like that? And I have gotten access to better and better rooms and smarter people, and I have observed this. Just because you say you're going to change the world doesn't mean you will. But everyone I've met who has had great impact started with the fire from day one. Don't aspire for the next promotion. Aspire to make an indelible mark on the world in whatever way most fills your heart. Don't wait until you're in your 40s, like I did, to want to go kick some serious ass. It is totally cool to have audacious dreams. I ended up sitting down like it's very like a mood. I didn't mean for that, but that's what I wanted to say to you. So thank you very much for having me.
We have time for a few questions.
if you have a few questions.
Anyone have, you guys please take advantage of this wonderful opportunity. Again, she didn't claim billionaire, but my money is on it. You've got some good candidates, so please ask
Sir.
away. There's a mic down here.
My name is Albert. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'll repeat the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you mentioned about 40 years of age. I'm in retirement. I'm in retirement now. The kids are all gone and grown up. How does that impact my longevity? How much time do I have?
So I just saw a talk about something called superagers, right? People who not only live a long time. All right, I'm going to take a minute to explain this. They did research about a question around memory that they correlate to vitality. They showed a group of 40-year-olds 10 objects and asked how many of the 10 objects could you recall? And then they did it for 41, 42, all the way to 85 years of age. And at 40, there's a pretty tight band, but it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, meaning there are both highs and lows, and just a bigger variance between who can remember 10 objects at the age of 80. And most science studies those that are below the norm, those with Alzheimer's, dementia, what happened to your brain. This researcher went to the top and said, those people who are remembering at the same or better capacity than 40-year-olds, what are their lives like? And I go, here we go. Don't drink, be vegan. It's just like you're gonna hear all these awful things. 80% had occasional alcohol, 70% had been a smoker in their lifetime. They did move, but no one was like a super athlete. What they were social and always learning. They had done a video of a woman who was 96 years old, and when they walked into her house, this incredible woman said, here is some strawberry rhubarb jam. I just learned the recipe yesterday. Learning new things at 96 years old. So you said you're 80. You have at least 16 years in front of you to learn new things and be social. So instead of saying, what can I get, what can you give? I bet you've learned a thing or two in your 80 years. What if you spend the next 16 just teaching anyone who will listen? There's incredible opportunity for impact every day if you are social and always learning.
I want to make a correction. I said 80, I didn't mean 80, I feel 80.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I have a bright light. You look fabulous. I just can't see you very well. There you go.
It was the athletics that has, taken control now. And I feel that I'm running out of time. Physically, I'm running out of time. But I enjoy the mentoring for the younger people. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, there's something called the corporate athlete. It's a camp for professionals who have reached the brass ring. They have achieved every bit of career success they ever thought they could. There is nowhere higher to go on the corporate ladder, and they're miserable. And they train people in a 3-day crash course to stop asking, what can I get, instead to ask, what can I give? Because that's ultimately where fulfillment lies. Like, enduring fulfillment is not in the bubble of get, but in the dopamine hit that comes with giving. According to people smarter than I am. I didn't come up with that, they did. Yes?
You say, I'm in from perspective, not from Champagne, and you're not from here. So, you say, thank you. When your founder gave that gift, and it was a CEO position, business cards, 3 times you said, no, no, no. Why was that? And what do you think about that thought you had?
I didn't see it. I didn't imagine it. I told myself the story that I'm the number 2, that I don't have enough vision, I don't have the leadership. Everything good that's come from Jellyvision has come from Harry. And I've learned so many things. Like, I do have vision. It's not always right, but that's okay. Nobody's always right. And secondly, businessing is a team sport. It's never a person of one. We have 320 employees. I don't have to be good. I have to be one of 319 other people. But I hadn't had it in my head as an aspiration, and that's what bothered me the most. Our founder left the business 6 years ago. He has had no involvement since then. He basically gave me his company, and we've like tripled since then. So I wish I had not, it didn't even strike me as a possibility, and that's small thinking. Red in the back. Yes.
Thank you. Oh, you're so sweet. Hi, my name is Alex Carrillo. I work with youth employment. I provide job opportunities to youth who are starting their career. A lot of them come to me and say, well, Alex, I have only 2 years of experience at McDonald's, but I want to get X, Y, and Z. So when I try to tell them that it's a long, they can do whatever they want, they're still hesitant. What is your piece of advice to a professional who has X experience in one field but wants to transfer to another, and it's not, and they're not quite confident yet in themselves to do that transition?
I try to remind everybody of the most forgotten fact in business. The most forgotten fact in business is that we're all human. Companies don't buy from companies, people buy from people. Companies don't innovate, people innovate, and companies don't hire, people hire. Tell who you are in a cover letter. Don't say, I have all this wonderful experience. Say, I'm a hard worker. I will figure out how to get it done. I'm self-reliant, and if you're in the office, I may bring baked goods from time to time. I won't be a problem, and I'll sweat the details. Put it out there. You'll be amazed what a thoughtful, earnest cover letter from someone who seems like they're going to be helpful, not harmful. They're going to make my life easier, not harder for a recruiter and the hiring team. Just remember, you're not applying to a company, you're applying to a person. Admit that you're humble, hungry, and hardworking. You have a much better shot than trying to pretend like your 2 years at McDonald's is really accretive to whatever business experience. Tell how you're willing to learn. And remember, people hire people. Be human. Put yourself forward. Be like, I was raised by a single mother. I know what hard work means. You put those stories in there. Be human.
Hi, my name is Rishabh, and this question is like, you are from a academic household, right? Where there is very less talk of business during the conversations and all. So how did the younger version of you find the right people, and how did you gain the ability to trust them, like to be where you are today? Because I know for sure, like considering my background as well, it's very difficult to think in the more business side of things if you're coming from that sort of household.
It is, I'm sorry, again, I said better lucky than good, I mean it. The person I interviewed with is one of the leading venture capitalists who became my mentor the day I interviewed for a job at his company, and he would just send me every couple of months someone to meet. I became like, what he would do is say, as next step you should talk to this Amanda Lannert, because I would try to be helpful, which made him look good. I would do whatever work I could do. I'd send a book I thought would be helpful, whatever, but he just sent me people, and probably a third of my professional network is now from connections Troy sent to me. So I was very lucky to have an innovator and a connector as a mentor from the age of 25 on. But weirdly enough, my older brother, who's 14 months older than I am, is a Grammy award-winning country music producer who has never had a job in his life. He's only worked for himself. He's the consummate entrepreneur. And he did it because he knew so clearly the problem he wanted to solve and the way he wanted to live his life, which was making music, that he thought he would just find a way to get there. So he is one of the most humble and hardworking people in the music business. He lacks ego all the time, and he became known as incredibly reliable as an engineer and built his way up from an engineer to a senior engineer to a producer to owning a studio to now he works with this country artist named Brad Paisley. But he started as an engineer that would do anything to get the job done because he just wanted to touch music. So, yeah, relationships count. So show up. Go to events at 1871. Go listen to panelists talking and then write really smart follow-ups. Think about who your peers are at school and who they know, and be honest with each other about what you're trying to do and what your problems are and how you can help each other and help people as much as you want to be helped. But you got to show up. You got to physically show up. I used to call it ladying up the room. And you got to go show up and meet these people.
Thank you.
Sorry, that's hard. Or go interview with Troy Hennekoff and have him be your mentor. That too. Okay, I think we're out of time. I actually have to run back. Thank you.